everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope your guys' week is going well. Well, we've got a video today where we're going to be taking a look at this upcoming full moon in Scorpio. If you guys like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below. This will subscribe you to my YouTube channel and you'll be up to date with what's going on in the cosmos. Excited to chat with you guys about this. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you find this video helpful and let me know where this is taking place in your chart. Are you feeling the intensity of this upcoming full moon? And is it making a specific aspect to a personal planet? I'd love to hear about that for you guys. Maybe you were born on a Scorpio full moon. Always give the feedback. I love reading your guys' comments. I can't reply to all of them, but I definitely do read them. So thank you guys for your support. This full moon is going to be coming in on April 23rd, 2024. So this is the next kind of lunation post all of that eclipse drama. And definitely Scorpio full moon does bring the drama, especially this one. It's a very Plutonian full moon. We're going to talk about why, especially with that really complex T-square that we're going to be seeing to Pluto. So April 23rd, 2024 at 4 degrees of Scorpio. Now, if you have any personal planets around 3 to about 5 degrees of Scorpio, whether that's a sun, moon, rising, an angle, or any planet around this degree, you're going to feel the punch of this particular lunation. And it's going to be happening mostly where I am, at least here in the United States, in the PM hours. So you're going to be seeing this around 6:48 p.m. Central Time. So that's going to be right around 4:48 p.m. Pacific, 7:48 p.m. Eastern. Obviously, I know we have people watching all over the globe, so you might have to kind of tweak your time zones a little bit. For some of you guys in other parts of the world, it'll be happening on the 24th. But you can't miss this full moon. It's particularly powerful and it's really kind of shining a light on Pluto themes. Now that's so appropriate considering Scorpio is the 8th sign of the zodiac. It's a feminine sign, but Scorpio is fixed water, so it's really emotional and it's ruled both by Mars and Pluto. So we're going to talk a lot about those aspects in today's lineup. 4 degrees always has kind of connections, right, to Cancer energies. So if you guys practice degree theory, we know that 4s deal with home, they deal with emotions, family. It can also be about our homeland. So we might be hearing more about homeland security. And Cancer does represent the conclusion or completion of things, and also the past, roots, ancestors, emotions, and yes, sometimes some angry tears. So we see kind of a combination between the blend of the moon and also Scorpio. So this is going to really be bringing up some really intense emotions that need to be purged and expressed. Now the Sabian symbol for this is going to be 5 degrees. We round up, right, because this is 4 degrees and change. But I will read this to you guys because this is an interesting one. 5 degrees of Scorpio, a massive rocky shore. The key word here is stabilization. The theme is a firm foundation. The symbol speaks to the reassuring effect that solid and lasting or permanent things have on the lives of men. The image of massive rocky shore symbolizes hardiness, durability, and safe harbor or security. The shore itself alludes to water and emotions. The suggestion here is that inner strength or psychological fitness is the foundation and basis of a stable outer life. On a practical level, the symbol can refer to the rock of Gibraltar or pillar of strength qualities found in those individuals who are recognized for their ability to stay calm and collected even in the most challenging or volatile situations. At its highest, the symbol represents strength of character, dependability, and persistence. Watch for being dogmatic, stubborn, and resistant to change. The accent is on security. You'll be looking for something solid and dependable to hold on to today. Your greatest advantage lies in being pragmatic and practical. Make sure all of your foundations are stable. Focus on the physical. Guard against being uncompromising and stubborn or refusing to cooperate. It's better to bend than to be broken. Stepping stones are foundation, dependability, reliability, sustainment, firmness, stability, endurance, permanent strength, conservativeness, and stubbornness. Okay, so the full moon will be kind of highlighting some of these themes in kind of connection to this Sabian symbol. I really think that this is kind of touching on the fact that on an individual level, we're really focusing on maintaining our inner strength and stability as we're kind of going through some turbulent circumstances. I think the massive rocky shore is connected to a solid foundation, and it's talking about kind of being resilient in the face of a storm, right? Kind of holding that line and not allowing, the waves to be able to kind of like penetrate or crash through. And I think it's encouraging development of inner strength and the ability to stay calm, right? That's going to be something that we're going to be really reflecting on and asking ourselves, how can we do that in the midst of some of these kind of climactic circumstances that sometimes come up during a full moon. Now, a Scorpio full moon in general, right? We always see this as we're coming into the springtime here in the northern hemisphere. We've got the sun that's in Taurus, which represents abundance and pleasure and growth and life, which is so appropriate as we're, a lot of us are out there kind of gardening and fertilizing our garden beds, and we're pulling up all the weeds and we're planting new seeds. And then we have this moon in Scorpio, which is very passionate, very emotional, very intense. And Scorpio and Taurus are the axis that represents life and death, abundance and fertility, and then transformation and purification or loss. So it's like that intricate balance between kind of life and death, what's mine and what I possess versus what we kind of give away. So I think as we're looking at this full moon, we're going to see deep emotional intensity, transformation, and exploration of hidden or repressed feelings, and possibly even information. Now, a full moon like this is generally characterized by a heightened sense of intuition, introspection, and the need to confront fears or desires that are typically hidden. And the reason being is that when we have a full moon, we see this polarity between the sun, which is consciousness, and the moon, which is our subconscious. It's really complex, it's emotional, right? It's kind of like sublunar when you think about it, something that's kind of beneath the surface that starts to kind of rise. Scorpio, being ruled by Mars and Pluto, is a very intense but also intuitive sign. Very sensitive and has a tendency to kind of pick up on some of the subtle things that are going out in the world to be better prepared, right? This is a sign that definitely is about preparedness. Anyway, I really feel like this is encouraging us to face our fears, embrace change, as well as develop a deeper understanding of our emotional depths and the ability to use this understanding for personal growth and transformation. These are key words when we think about Scorpio. And I think also of Scorpio's association with power and control and the desire to understand the deeper, darker aspects of life. So this may be a full moon where we are kind of like confronting and releasing some of our deep-seated psychological or emotional fears. Now, this is a little bit of a different moon. It's Plutonian in its own right because Pluto is a huge star in the midst of this particular full moon. So, beyond just the emotional depth and the transformation of power, I think we're going to be seeing that there are secrets that are arising and also desires and trying to, understand things more deeply. I think that Scorpio moons have a tendency to seek introspection and self-analysis. So a lot of this can be about facing fears and desires that we would traditionally keep hidden. And under that light of the moon, right, everything is being exposed. So it's kind of hard to kind of hide out and not kind of show our emotions or our feelings. And it's going to feel like it's being kind of squeezed out of us like by a python or something because of Pluto's hard aspect. So it's possible that we will see more intense themes relating to the darker side of the Scorpio archetype that can come up, like control, jealousy, possessiveness, and really come to this realization that we need to actually let go of some kind of emotional baggage. Now, the whole point of this is to express this and get it out so we can develop better emotional strength and learn how to, I think, be more resilient and less restricted, less afraid, less willing, right, to create change. But I think it's going to come from like a pretty dramatic push from Pluto. So as we see Pluto, one of the co-rulers of Scorpio, Aligned with this full moon, we see a pretty significant T-square. So we always have an opposition between the sun and the moon. This is, every month we see, the polarity between the two signs and kind of highlighting these themes out in the world. So obviously, Scorpio and Taurus is beyond life and death. It could be about finances and resources and banking and taxes and what we possess versus what we owe, right? There's no coincidence that this is happening right around the time that taxes are due. It's a very Scorpio kind of topic. But this particular full moon, I think with the square to Pluto, is really highlighting Pluto's theme generally in Aquarius, which is going to be about a collective kind of uprising or some kind of breakthrough that's happening or collective purging, some kind of crisis that's happening across the board for all of us, which is going to lead to some really strong feelings and emotions. So when you have a T-square like this, you have an opposition and then a hard 90-degree angle. This is essentially saying that, the focal point of the T, so that's Pluto, is really kind of like the tip of the spear that's breaking through that opposition during the full moon, saying this is really where the drama is coming from. And so this is why it's so important to understand astrology. Not all new and full moons are created equally. Some are going to have positive aspects, some are going to have challenging aspects. And while the full moon is happening in Scorpio, right, you want to look at which house you're seeing the full moon in. That's where you're going to see kind of like some kind of conclusion or completion. Know that that's stemming from the pressure that's coming from Pluto in Aquarius. So actually, I would say like the troublemaker or the conflict or maybe like the crisis or like the unexpected kind of thing that shows up, right? Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, which is very unconventional, futuristic, is likely what's pushing this kind of dramatic event that's going to come from the full moon. So when we see this, the square is challenging. It's meant to represent like a Mars energy, and it indicates that there's tension and a need to make some kind of change or adjustment. So really Pluto in Aquarius is saying like, okay, I'm kind of injecting some of this drama to bring about some of these bigger completions or conclusions. And Pluto is the planet of transformation, the planet of death and rebirth. It definitely brings up, issues relating to power, control, abuse of power, and deep-seated psychological or emotional issues. So in Aquarius, it's about collective transformation, societal change, breaking down of the old, outdated systems. It could be about the internet, it could be about technology. This could also be some drama, in the political world that can kind of be brewing. And keep in mind that it's about a 2-degree orb square. We see the full moon at 4 and Pluto is actually at a 2. So as the moon is coming into Scorpio earlier in the day, it leaves Libra, it's going to be squaring Pluto before it gets to the full moon. So likely you're going to see some of the impacts, I think, happening, earlier in the day, or quite honestly, from the time that the moon is actually in Libra, opposing all of this Aries about a day or two prior. You were already feeling this energy, so it might kind of catch some people off guard because it might kind of come a little bit early. As this moon continues to go through Scorpio, it will also have to face an opposition to Jupiter and Uranus. So it's going to kind of shake in the days leading up and about a day or two after. And so until we kind of get the moon out of Scorpio, we're definitely going to see some stuff that's going to be kind of hanging around for a little while. In the square between, I think a full moon and Pluto, it leads to a really, intense period of emotional upheaval. It's about the need to confront and transform aspects of our life that are no longer serving growth or progress. And it can also bring up issues relating to power dynamics in relationships, because oppositions like the full moon are relational. So it talks about events outside of us that kind of impact us. The moon is the fastest moving planet that we look at in astrology, so it can be kind of collective events and things that are happening in the world, which can kind of impact us. And it's also going to be, I think, helping us really get a better understanding of who is in control, how much of my power am I giving away, embracing transformation and really recognizing that it's time to release old patterns that we have to let go of or we have to sever in order to further our progress, at least like on a soul level. So for a lot of us, especially those of you guys who have any placements either around that like, 3 to 5 degrees of Scorpio or 3 to 5 degrees of the fixed signs. So Taurus, Leo, and also Aquarius, you guys are going to be feeling this pretty intensely. So just keep that in mind. Now, when we look specifically at the T-square, the T-square can also be kind of indicating that there is a need to end something or remove something or kill something off. And it can represent the need to like let go of something old. And it's interesting because Pluto in Aquarius is about transforming the future, right? It may mean that there is a need to really break through and go deeper in transformation in the Aquarius area of our life. And that some of the events that are coming up right now are really happening because there is some rapid kind of like movement towards a new developing future. Pluto's at a 2 as well. So this is a degree that deals with like banking and resources and food and the planet. It's like a Taurus degree. So we're going to hear, I think, lots of things relating to those particular topics. I would say just watch because, when we have fixed signs and we have T-squares, it almost kind of represents like a tug of war that's going on, and like neither house, or I guess I would say neither party, both Taurus, Scorpio, and Aquarius, want to budge, right? The fixed signs are meant to kind of stay in place and they don't want to let go of anything. So if we think of like Scorpio and Taurus, like this opposition between the sun and the moon being in a bit of like a combative kind of aspect, Pluto's going to come in and is going to say like, hey, like we need to kind of cut the drama, or we need to, for the sake of the future, move through whatever crisis is kind of brewing and like actually be able to kind of come together in a revolutionary way. Now, I do anticipate that, with squares, we have to be more deeply grounded. We have to be resilient. We have to be willing to overcome fear. That's like a big theme that comes up with Pluto squares. And like I said, the fixed signs are all about holding on to something and not letting something go. So we may realize that there are some things coming up in our life right now that we're holding on to that's not healthy for us. Relationships, grudges, fears, pain, trauma, right? All of these can kind of feel a little bit more highlighted during this particular full moon. And T-squares always bring up some sense of like this fear of transformation, especially when it involves Pluto, or, not wanting to let go of control, not wanting to, like release something, like being possessive over something, or being very fixated on like a financial possession of something. And so there can be some conflicts that can kind of come up as a result of that. But I think for the most part, outside of like the Pluto square, the other ruler that we look at is also Mars, and Mars is hanging out in between Saturn and Neptune. So we've recently had the Mars-Saturn conjunction. We had that right around the solar eclipse in Aries earlier in the month. Now Mars has kind of been in no man's land as he has been moving through kind of like the waters of Pisces, where he can lose momentum. He's been having some setbacks and some delays with Saturn. There's also been lower energy levels that kind of happens with this, where we get confused and we're not really totally sure what direction we're going in. And Mars is actually getting ready to come into conjunction with Neptune, which can be especially confusing. And it can also represent like self-undoing and things that are going on deep in our subconscious, or fears that are coming up that are holding us back. Difficult position for Mars to be in. I'm not really seeing a lot of support other than a separating sextile to Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. So it can really feel like we're better off actually releasing and letting things go during this full moon, rather than trying to start or initiate something new. So this may not be the best full moon to be launching things, or to be beginning new things, or to be making any permanent decisions. For me, this is like a full moon that's really very clear that we have to kind of deal with whatever comes up, and we have to see that challenge or that crisis or that upheaval as an opportunity to go, okay, the pain of staying the same is like too much. Like now I have to make a change. So we could really lean into this Mars in Pisces, where we are becoming more empathic, or paying better attention to our body, or recognizing where it's not beneficial for us to be kind of pushing, a certain agenda or goal if it's not really going to be helping us. And we can lean into that sextile with Jupiter and Uranus, where we can go, actually, letting this go is kind of like creating space for something new. It's presenting us with a new opportunity where there could be new systems, new growth, there could be new abundance, there could be new relationships, there could be more opportunities also for positive things. So this is like a full moon that you guys are going to want to look at and kind of go, okay, you know, maybe it's time to make lemonade. Although I do think that for some of us, that is going to prove challenging, because I think that it's challenging to find the optimism when we're seeing a full moon square Scorpio, Pluto, because it represents this feeling of being like, okay, that happened, tower moment, you know, how do I move forward? And Mars in Pisces is saying, you know, gracefully, you know, with a sense of knowing, with a sense of faith, with belief, with a sense of, you know, I think also patience. You know, Mars in Pisces is very patient. I see this in the chart of people who are, you know, really active in working with those who are in need, people who are also connected to helping those who are like homeless, or I see that connected to people who do a lot of work in like social activism work, people who are really patient and courageous. And it's like it's a quiet, brave kind of energy, Mars in Pisces. So I think that this is about a lot of us not giving up, but certainly not perpetuating or kind of fueling some kind of conflict or some kind of drama or fight. We want to see this as the opportunity to really shine a light on, okay, where has there been some kind of breakdown? Where has there been blockages and drama or secrets and conflict? And like, let's just get it out in the open so we can finally start to kind of get down to business and have a better understanding of the life that we would like to build, or that we would like to lead, right? Because yes, it's a full moon in Scorpio, but Taurus sun and these incoming planets that will be coming into Taurus pretty soon is going to represent over the next month or so something new that we're building, right? Some new aspect in our life. It could be financial building, it could be physical building, it could be stronger self-esteem, better resources. And really it has to come from this kind of like grand awareness or uncovering that will likely come at the time of the full moon. Now, yes, this is going to be powerful, right? But I think that the sextile between Pisces and Taurus is more about the power of believing that, you know, the truth will prevail. Jupiter has the connection to truth. The faith in knowing that better things will come. But, you know, in order to, you know, kind of get there, we have to do what Scorpio moons do best, and we have to flush everything out. We have to get all the gunk out of the pipes. We have to, you know, purge and purify and get out all the toxins and everything that's actually inhibiting us from being able to have life, right, Taurus? Now, when I see this sextile between Mars and Jupiter and Uranus, because Mars is about the direction of where we're going, right? It's the ruler of the North Node. So on a personal level, Mars in Pisces is about us acknowledging and knowing when it's time to actually wrap something up or let something go, or to be more sympathetic or empathic to other people, to be willing to be warriors for change, right? This is an immutable sign. So Mars sextile Uranus is this kind of exciting energy that's like, this ended, this is beginning, you know? Okay, this was what we cut off, and now this is the change that's going to manifest from this suddenly. And it can come quickly. Even though a sextile is like a soft angle, it still makes me kind of feel like even the days leading up to this particular full moon, once Mars starts hitting about 20, 21 degrees and it's hitting this sextile, it's activating the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that happened just a few days prior. And that moment is a seeding. I think you guys have heard me say that. It's like not necessarily something going to happen on the 19th or the 20th of April, but that conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus will play out over the better part of like the immediate next year. And then, you know, in over 14 years before we see the next conjunction. So really, this is kind of baked into the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. It's that, you know, through things that are ending, there is room for innovation. There's room for growth. There's new financial opportunities, right? So for those of you guys who are paying attention to like what's going on in the world, you're seeing where, you know, certain structures, you know, Mars, Saturn, Neptune are breaking apart. They're crumbling. And whether this is government, you know, and how they're managing things, if this is certain businesses that are kind of like breaking down, or things that are kind of phasing out. or you're seeing this as, stuff relating to storms and weather, whatever, the sextile to Jupiter and Uranus is the opportunity to basically go, okay, this thing's falling apart. What's next? What can I get involved in? What action? What kind of like group connections? It could also be, what investments am I making? That could potentially be beneficial for what's going on in the future. Mars and Saturn are still in close conjunction, so it can actually talk about shortages and limitations. The conjunction in Neptune is things that we don't see coming. So I do think that we may see shortages of things, which will create some price surges or price gouging, in my opinion, of certain Taurus things. So this could be metals, this could be materials, this could also be things connecting to food and resources and land. I've been listening to a lot of people talking about, this kind of agenda to kind of like take down like meat and meat consumption kind of globally. There's no matter of debating this. This has definitely been a huge topic for the World Economic Forum, where there was a move basically to make it more challenging to, be able to eat meat and dairy. So regardless of where you stand on that, the Jupiter-Uranus really, I think, is kind of talking about these new innovations in food and farming, and what can be grown and what can be created and what can be, like developed using science. That's very kind of Uranus. And Jupiter can talk about, these billionaires getting involved and wanting to kind of create all these new kind of formulated foods. But I also feel like this is talking about where some of the setbacks and the shortages relating to like Taurus, beef, dairy, cattle, things connecting to farming or homesteading. Actually, I think the secret thing that's going on behind the scenes with that Mars, Saturn, Neptune is going to be things relating to water. And so I've been hearing people talk about this recently, especially in the United States. I guess in the last month, there's been moves to not outright directly try to limit beef or, like food relating to like homesteading or farms, but more so creating stricter, things revolving around like water runoff and things that are coming from farming. And so I think that's actually very much that it's not going to be a full-blown, like direct in your face, you can't buy these things. It's going to be more relating to, well, the taxes, the limitations, the things that are coming up for farmers where they're being told that water is being tested and it's being treated, and the cost of that, and whether or not they're producing X amount of like pollutants and how that's impacting the planet, which in turn could make it increasingly more difficult to actually be able to have access to some of this stuff. Taurus is about food, guys. That's what it's about. And when we have planets going through Taurus and we see a Scorpio moon on the other side, it will definitely talk about scarcity issues and issues revolving around what you can actually consume, or what the price is going to be, or what the tax is going to be on it. So certainly these squares to Pluto, you're going to see some stuff ramping up around the world revolving around water rights, food consumption, taxes. You're going to hear more about the impact that this is having on the climate with Pluto in Aquarius. And when you think about Aquarius, Aquarius is about panels, right? And groups of people and like this global kind of community. So you're going to see a lot of like Plutonian type of archetypes that are going to be kind of coming out around this full moon, that are going to be making some pretty big and dramatic statements about, what the future of consumerism looks like and the impact that this is going to be having on everybody financially, but also psychologically. And so I think people are going to be kind of stunned to see some of this stuff. So yeah, secretive moves bringing big change, with Mars being in this position between Saturn. Saturn is saying, we won't let this thing happen. We have got Neptune that's also kind of concealing part of what's happening. That's why there's a lot of questioning around what's going on out in the world pertaining to these never-ending wars, right? Mars is the planet of war. So with Mars in conjunction with Saturn and Neptune, I think there is a lot of people controlling and dictating and determining what images and what videos you're seeing pertaining to conflict in foreign lands. And I would say be very careful with where you get your information. Be mindful that this is like very, divisive conjunction here. This is something that's intentionally trying to manipulate or edit or figure out what can be put out that can be seen, that's going to agitate and create some kind of frustration or anger, which could perpetuate a lot of the moon square Pluto, right? Where, moon square Pluto in its own right is about feeling emotionally threatened. That's what this is about. And with the Sun square Pluto, the opening square, it's basically saying that, you know, like physical assets or physical resources, food, money, you know, the earth is now all starting to kind of feel the effects of these kind of collective rumbles or these challenges that are kind of coming up for humanity. So when the moon comes into play, it's basically saying now emotionally people are going to be kind of lashing out or reacting the way that Scorpio moons kind of can. And resisting or pushing back against whatever is going on with what can potentially be some power grabbing type kind of dynamics. Now, Jupiter and Uranus down here, you know, as I'm creating this video, I'm creating this a bit early. I'm about 2 weeks early. So I don't know what's going to happen by the time we get to this full moon or with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I will say I've done videos on this. I've talked about it quite a bit, but you know, Jupiter makes everything bigger, right? So whatever Jupiter touches, it grows. It's almost like a magnifying glass that's going to make it kind of a global trend or pattern. So this conjunction between, you know, Jupiter, which is the god of all of the gods, right? He's the king. He presides over things like abundance and resources and people who are wealthy and things pertaining to culture and travel and philosophy. He also has his hand in laws and anything pertaining to, you know, right from wrong. Now, this conjunction to Uranus is interesting when you think about it, right? Because both of them, I think, to some extent, have something kind of in common. Although Uranus wants to be a bit of like a rebel, there can be this sense of both of these two planets wanting more freedom. Wanting more growth, wanting more abundance, especially when they come together. So it's kind of saying that collectively there is going to be this growth period that's going to happen where collectively people are waking up. They are learning, right? They're educating themselves more about food and agriculture and resources and the human body and how we can be more kind of in tune with our physical kind of, our physical kind of being. I think that this is interesting because it is saying that during the time of the full moon that a lot of the drama that might be kind of coming about is as a result of this conjunction. We'll see the conjunction at 21 degrees, but right around the time just after this full moon, Uranus will move to step 22 and will conjunct Jupiter, and this is like a Capricorn degree. So certainly it's, I think, going to be more, especially here in the United States, revolving around our spending, our budget, you know, our deficit for sure, and like what we owe. And I think we're going to hear a lot about just this like crazy out of control, you know, government or kind of political spending. And so I think this is going to be a lot of people who are going to be having feelings about, well, wait a second, why is several $billion going to this? And why are there billions of dollars being allocated to this country or this war or paying off other people's debt or, you know, covering student loans? And I think that's going to kind of build into this, at least here in the United States. You know, there's been tons of loans that have apparently been, as of recently, this last week, forgiven. There's been more debate about whether or not there's going to be another package sent to Ukraine. There's definitely been some influence on, you know, giving money to both the sides of the Iran and, you know, Israeli kind of conflict. And then you hear things in the background, like people realizing, oh my God, I owe how much in taxes? Or, you know, oh my God, you know, I'm being told, I think it was in Atlanta, tons of people showing up to go and prove their identity because they were told that they were denied their tax refund unless they went to like a tax office and they had to show their ID in order to get their refund. So when I think of like the money that we possess, I think of Taurus. When I think of like people freaking out about what they owe or the fact that they haven't been paid, I think of Scorpio. So I think we're going to see this increasing kind of pressure and awareness where people are waking up and they're going like, wait a second, like, why am I paying so many taxes and it's going to things, but then, you know, I'm getting smaller and smaller amount of a refund, or I'm paying more and more in taxes. And that might be the bubble that kind of pops with this full moon. But I also think about, just personally, this is just me kind of like my mind rambling. I really feel like so many people go to work, they get a paycheck, they collect that paycheck, it goes in the bank, they don't even really think about it. Not many people really look at their pay stubs. If you don't, you should. I think it would be a very different situation here in America if every citizen had to actually manually, physically write a check and pay their taxes. unless you're self-employed or you have a side hustle or you have a 1099 or you're a gig worker, you know, those people know because they're either sending their quarterlies or they know that their taxes are going to come due, that they're going to have to pay and be responsible for at the end of the year. Everybody else who's, you know, claiming whatever dependents you're claiming and then filing your taxes, you get really excited at the end of the year and you go, woo, I'm getting a refund, right, in the spring. But people are waking up and kind of realizing that those refunds are becoming harder and harder to come by, or they're getting less and less, or there's less incentives for their taxes. And I feel like if people start paying their taxes, if you manually have to write a check, this would be a completely different ball game. You know, the United States used to revolt over like a several percent tax on tea. And now we're in a position where there are taxes that are being hiked up upwards of 30% in some areas of our life, and like people are acting like nothing's wrong. So I do believe that a lot of this stuff is going to come up around the full moon. I do believe the Jupiter-Uranus is going to be increasing interest rates, potentially even inflation and cost of goods. So I don't anticipate this is going to be something that's going to come down. I actually think this is going to be something that's going to continue. Now, leading up to this full moon, we see that also the sun will have come into Taurus and will start squaring Pluto. I actually think that's going to happen right around the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And that in itself, the sun square Pluto, is there is this powerful situation that I'm coming up against. And, you know, this is me feeling threatened. So this is another reason why I think it's actually going to play out a couple days prior. So if you guys look at like the transits that are happening around the 21st, when we start to see the sun square Pluto, and we also see the moon, which will be going through Libra and opposing all of this, this is actually the kickoff for that, right? For that particular full moon that we're going to have. All right, so what else do I have for you guys? I think the other thing that's worthy of mentioning is like Mercury is still retrograde. It will be going direct later in the week of the full moon. It's got to drop back to 15 degrees and conjunct the North Node. But there is still some issues revolving around communications, right? There is still news that's becoming available, or people are still coming to some kind of realizations, or they're working through things and they're waking up to something. I think with Mercury retrograde in Aries, it's proven to be a very combative time, really difficult for communication, especially as it's been in conjunction to Chiron, where we're feeling wounded, and it's been activating the eclipse point where, you know, we have definitely been seeing some of the reverberations of that particular painful, I think for some people, eclipse that just continues to keep playing out. But I also think about how, you know, Mercury getting ready to go direct a few days later with that conjunction to the North Node is this realization, this awareness on a personal level that's like, I have to be brave, or I have to say something, or I have to take action. And this whole retrograde has been about, you know, like, action speaking louder than words. And you can say that you're going to do something, but if you're not actually doing something, that's when you're going to kind of start to see that there's like a problem. So it's been really waking people up and making them realize that they have to be self-aware. They have to be more aware of how they're communicating and how they're expressing themselves. And, you know, the fact that actions, you know, and words have consequences, and that if we get angry, we say things out of frustration, that it can have some pretty gnarly results if we're not careful. And then I also think about how Mars is like the dispositor, you know, for this. And Mars is important during this time because it co-rules Scorpio. So, you know, Mars being between Saturn and Neptune, and how that's kind of directly connected to Mercury retrograde. And this is, you know, still quite a few planets in Aries. I remember saying to you guys that part of the Mars Saturn-Neptune transit would most likely materialize as some kind of an attack that would happen in a church. And unfortunately this week, a pretty prominent Christian, I guess like pastor, preacher in Sydney was attacked with a knife. Really sad stuff, especially, I can't remember his name, so I apologize. I'm sure somebody will post in the comments, but really interesting because he's somebody who's been rather outspoken for somebody who's kind of like in the limelight, like religiously, but honest and obviously, you know, kind of being direct about the state of the world, and supposedly was attacked by a young man who identified as a Muslim and attacked him by knife point during a live stream sermon in Sydney. Horrific stuff. But I've been watching the news the last 24 hours, and there's been this mass gathering of all of these, you know, Christians, you know, thousands of people who have been gathering around the church And so I think about how you can see events that can be tragic, Mars, Saturn, literally a knife attacking a religious figure, in a place of worship. But that dispositor, being connected to Mercury, Chiron, and Venus, and like the spirit of individuals standing up and being like, this is not okay. This is not okay. And it can make people angry and reactionary, or it can make people actually want to take action and speak out and be like, why is this happening? Like, why is this happening in the world? And like, what can we do actively to prevent this from happening? So unfortunately, that was one of those predictions that materialized quite literally. And I'm hoping that, we see less and less of this in the world, because, places of worship of any practice, right, really should be sacred places and places that are protected. And I think so much of what has come up with this particular eclipse season in retrograde has been things revolving around freedom of speech, and like how that in itself should be something that's so sacred, and how people can get, so angry and so agitated about people just kind of speaking their truth, right? Anyway. And then finally, I think I would just pay attention with Mercury conjunct the North Node. There are still really there's important and prominent information that's still coming out. And so the Mercury retrograde phase works as if, we see the shadow, it turns retrograde, Mercury goes and gets the information that needs to come out, he relays the information. So it is possible that something about this particular full moon is about where there has been concealed information that has not been released that's now starting to kind of come out. And I mentioned very specifically that, fours deal with like home and family. And so I think when I think of Scorpio, I think of like security and whether or not people are safe. And then I think of like that moon square Pluto, where there could be some intelligence agencies that are coming out and, giving briefings or talking about, homeland security issues. And potentially where, people are being told that they need to kind of be aware and keeping their eyes peeled about what may potentially be coming out in the world regarding our home security and safety. Pluto does deal with crime, and so I think that this can definitely be some interesting stuff that's coming out, some numbers, some statistics relating to crime, particularly home crimes or issues revolving around, domestic issues, especially with the moon, being in Scorpio, we could see more domestic issues coming up, or things pertaining to rights of people's homes. And I think this could be everything from people potentially losing their homes because of tax-related issues, or issues relating to kind of squatters' rights. Certainly this is something that's really, I think, being kind of thrown on Pluto and Aquarius, where people collectively are going to be like, why are we, paying so much money in taxes and potentially losing our homes if we can't pay it? And what are those taxes going towards? Or, why am I, dealing with a situation where I have a home that I've worked hard to pay off, and, now I potentially have people that are squatting in my home, and I'm not being protected. So this is going to be the stuff that you're going to see. Now, according to degree theory, Nicola says that this connection with 4 is Cancer. So this is about things like the human race, nations, patriots and patriotism. I think with that square to Pluto, it's very obvious that there is going to be some collective talk or narrative revolving around, well, are we considering, people who are being patriotic to their homeland, people who are deemed domestic terrorists? Like, is that fair to say that because somebody is patriotic? Because you may or may not agree with somebody else's perspectives on immigration or politics or anything, religion, does that justify, considering or calling somebody that? And I think that's definitely going to be something that's going to come up, because it's about patriotism and the challenge to patriotism. I mean, there's no candy coating it. I mean, not to politic, but like, Biden has come out and essentially said that he considers anybody who voted for or supported Donald Trump to be labeled a domestic terrorist. And I'm not saying this because I'm propping Trump up, okay? Like, I think both parties are corrupt, to be honest with you. I can't support either one. But if the shoe were on the other foot, and if it were a situation where Trump were president and he was saying anybody who, supports Biden becoming president should be classified as a terrorist, people would be like up in arms over it. So as soon as we start condemning people and determining who is and is not a terrorist purely based off of their political support, that's a little scary. That's a bit of a problem. And so I think about what's gone on recently with some of like the FISA hearings and the fact that FISA continued to go through. There were some, alterations and some changes obviously to that, but it will remain, I think, for another 4 years, and going to give obviously 3-letter agencies clearance to still be able to kind of spy on people and see what they're saying and what they're doing. And so you don't have to be, like a rocket scientist to make those connections. If there is a move to criminalize particular party affiliations and connect them to people because of their beliefs or how they voted, even if they're not vocal about a particular candidate, this is setting up some of the drama that you kind of see with the squares to Pluto and Aquarius, because that's literally about drama and conflict and bloodbaths, literally over politics. I also think that this could bring out some pretty damning information revolving around who's invested in what, or what donors are donating to particular candidates. I do think that that might bring something out as well, especially with Mars being in Pisces. It can be talking about connections and affiliations with, international companies, especially companies that have affiliations with pharmaceuticals, with war, with anything in regards to weather technology and stuff like that, because that's all that Pisces stuff. Hometowns, liquid water, tears, milk and dairy products. So are we going to see something that's going to get highlighted about the next phase, which is going to also be dairy? I mean, in recent weeks, we've heard this craze about the bird flu and telling people don't eat undercooked eggs and don't be, drinking milk, and fear the dairy cows. Could this potentially be something related to that because of that degree? Sure. Of women, public opinion. So these are some of the themes that are going to be connected to that Scorpio moon at a 4. And for those of you guys who are a Scorpio moon, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback, or if you have an 8th house moon, you may kind of resonate with some of this like Scorpio stuff. Obviously, when the moon is in Scorpio, it's considered in its fall, right? Because it's in the opposite sign of its exaltation, which is traditionally Taurus. So when we see the moon moving through Scorpio's sign, this very kind of Mars-Pluto energy, it's considered challenging, right? Because it's focusing on emotionally expressing Scorpio's intensity and depth. And we can see emotional extremes that can play out, and challenges expressing moon-related themes like nurturing or kind of like protective qualities. So Moon and Scorpio people experience very deep and complex emotional feelings. There's a tendency to hold on to negative emotions. The benefit though is that they can be very intuitive, and you guys can have a strong ability to really delve into the depths of your own psyche and other people. So I think with this placement, what we're really realizing is that, emotional vulnerability is important. Letting go of the need to feel like we have to control, letting go of emotional pain. Why? Because it's necessary to do that before we can kind of move into the future. We have to actually kind of like triage the trauma and like really get in there and do whatever we have to do to kind of clear it out, so that way we can actually start to see things heal. And when I see like T-squares, I think of something that's been kind of like festering that has to literally be expressed and like brought to the surface. Just as like an example, right? Like you guys have had a splinter, and until you like get in there and you actually clean the wound and you kind of pop the splinter out, it's going to continue to fester and it can get infected and you can have pain. Or if you go and get a facial, right? All girls know what I'm talking about. You get your facial and you're, laying there and everything's really nice and comfortable until they start expressing your face, right? And they're kind of removing all of the things in your face that's creating that kind of clogged congestion. And it's painful, but when you're done, the redness starts to subside and then, your skin looks a little bit better. So what's festering basically is Pluto. And it's saying that because of some power struggles, some control issues, this is a Saturn energy. So Saturn is one of the dispositors of Pluto. And like, look, Mars, Saturn, and Neptune are still conjunct. Because of some secret dealings or mishandlings or things that have been foggy, vague, manipulated, or confused, now we're about to see the straw that's going to break the camel's back. And I have told you guys for some time that Saturn is about structures. It doesn't matter if it's a building or if it's a government, group, or if it represents some kind of like company. We're going to see that this is like an emperor has no clothes moment. And so this may materialize under a Scorpio full moon as more stories that we're seeing on social media, people going to the bank and trying to take cash out and then being told, no, we're not giving withdrawals, or you have to tell us what this is for before we're able to physically, tangibly get your money, right, Taurus? So Scorpio is that panic over the fact that things are becoming more digitalized, things are transforming very quickly, the power and control over money, because Pluto is at a 2. So this is a banking degree. And I genuinely feel like it's a liquidity issue. You ask any economist or anybody in the financial sector, they're going to tell you that part of what's going on is that the money that you think you have in the banks don't physically possess. So we start to kind of see with situations like this, we could see runs on the banks, or people who are, scrambling and panicking, trying to get what they need for their home, or they're, trying to make investments into their home, or we can see some kind of crisis relating to the banking and home market, because this is at a 4. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. That's already been happening. We're seeing that, mortgages are declining. How many people are taking mortgages, regardless of interest rates and stuff? They are dropping to pre-pandemic lows. So it's going to be wild to see how that kind of plays out with this particular full moon. Now, just to give you guys some context, the last time that we saw a new moon in Scorpio, so, I'm going to show you where this was seated, was in the fall of last year. Okay, so it was November 13th, 2023. So we saw a new moon in Scorpio, and it was at 20 degrees right here, and it was conjunct Mars. So that's pretty significant, because at the time we had trines to Neptune. So we were dreaming, we were passionate. We saw Mars also in close proximity. So there was a lot of setting goals and feeling like we need to get the show on the road, and we're moving pretty quickly. We also saw a slight sextile to Pluto. So this was a pretty powerful new moon, but the opposition to Uranus was just yelling and screaming what would ultimately come of this when this became a full moon, or when the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction at 21 degrees was going to happen, is that you were going to see some kind of bottoming or some kind of flip of the financial markets, and that there would be some kind of inevitable kind of crisis that would come as a result of this. So if you guys think back to what was happening in November, we could have seen some significant kind of dips and fluctuations going on then. And then that's going to bring us to this coming full circle now with this Scorpio full moon that's going to be taking place in the next few weeks. Something else that I thought about, that it didn't come up for me until recently, but it's worthy of mentioning. If you guys think about what happened in 2020, right? We saw that stellium of planets in Capricorn. We saw Pluto in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, Jupiter in Capricorn. And obviously it was this conjunction that started that was going to materialize as some kind of power grab, some kind of large, government, global kind of operation that was planned. We don't know what it was. We can speculate what it was, what took place 3 months later. But that came in January of 2020. So the conjunction that I was really looking at was when we saw, let's see, what was it? When we saw, actually, let me just show you. I think it was, I want to say it was Saturn and Pluto. So we had Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars, and that was in March. And if you guys remember, the 3rd week of March, we had the lockdowns. But I was looking more at this. Okay, so Saturn and Pluto were aligning in January. And it was right here at 22 degrees. Okay, eventually Jupiter hit this degree, but that's pretty significant. The Saturn-Pluto cycle is what I was really focusing on. So this was at 22 degrees. So this was happening in January. So we weren't really aware of the stuff that was going on until February going into March. But when we think of Saturn and its domicile in Capricorn, being focused on leadership, top-down control, anything regarding, organizations and big business, and, Pluto saying, there's going to be this major change in how we're doing businesses. And certainly for many people who lost their jobs, had to take weeks or months off, or had to close their business, it definitely materialized. We saw a significant crackdown on anything that was considered to not be necessary, right? So when we think of essential businesses, The big box stores stayed open. Granted, they forced people to wear diapers on their face, but they stayed open for the most part. But we saw like smaller companies close, and we saw liquor stores stay open. But like, yeah, just a lot of the stuff that happened didn't make sense to me. But I'm focusing on how this planted a seed. And so now when we look at what's happening now, you know, Jupiter, Uranus meeting, right? Coming into that 21 and 22 degree is actually trining this conjunction. So now it's basically saying it's like this free flowing energy that's going to be happening, because trines are like a Jupiter energy of radical, unexpected, you know, physical or financial changes as a result of this, because it's going to be trining it almost exactly. Actually, Jupiter and Uranus will move to 22 degrees. So, okay, fast forward 4 years later, you know, now we're kind of in a situation where I think so much of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction quite literally is going to be the financial effects of what limitations, what happened economically, you know, what business and how the business world, you know, kind of shifted. Let me bring this back here. There we go. And you guys are going to see this play out also around the same time. So even though the conjunction's not going to take place until the 20th at 21, you're going to see Jupiter and Uranus move to 22, and they're going to trine it. So the fact that this is happening like around the Scorpio full moon also makes me kind of feel like this is where we really start to see where just how much some of these bigger businesses, these bigger banks, these other things are really starting to like kind of take over. And the real physical and financial and economic effects of what happened since some of that slowdown that we saw in 2020. Now, the next day after this full moon in Scorpio, the moon will continue to keep moving through Scorpio, and it's going to come into an opposition with Jupiter and Uranus. So you're going to want to actually pay attention even the next day, because the full moon is going to continue to kick until it leaves Scorpio. The next day and even into the 25th, I'm anticipating this could definitely bring some more rocks, rattles, and rolls, especially pertaining to the market. So I'm not sure what day this is going to be, but pay attention, because it's going to be something that's definitely going to continue, especially as we see the moon come into a trine with Mars, who is approaching that conjunction to Neptune, which may materialize as more of these weird, suspicious kind of false flag events. We may see more conflict revolving around, you know, religious culture and religious clashes and things of that nature, especially because the conjunction is going to be at 28. So it'll be something that is relating to issues within our communities, issues within our homeland. And Mars is the attacker, right? So Mars is seen as something that does usually wield a weapon, or it can be something that is combative. Mars is also about disease, okay? So that's something else to kind of think about. So, you know, in the midst of still a Mercury retrograde and Mars coming into conjunction with Neptune, until Mars actually comes into Aries, we're not really going to know the true effects of what has been going on behind the scenes, and like what issues we are potentially kind of dealing with, or what kind of behind the scenes, you know, like operations are going on relating to war. So some of this stuff has still yet to be seen. I anticipate we will see more of this kind of coming out once Mars gets out of that conjunction. So throughout this particular full moon, you know, a lot of this is going to be about embracing making changes, right? And things coming to a head that really had been planted since last year. So if you think about that full moon that we had in that new moon that we had in Scorpio, it was like, I got to do this right now, because I'm feeling like I'm under the gun and there's going to be some dramatic change. This is now where you start to see some of those changes transpire. Watch for the deep emotional undercurrents. This is about internal emotional power and resilience. So remember, like that coast, right, that's getting hit with the storm, the Sabian symbol talks about holding the line and being calm and collected under pressure, not backing down, not allowing life to kind of wear you away, and staying focused and staying solid. Do what you can to best emotionally ground yourself, however that looks. You know, Scorpio moons are great for detoxes. They're great for purging. It's great for therapy sessions, trauma healing, working with a shamanic practitioner, doing anything that's about cutting cords or kind of closing doors to things that aren't going to be supporting us emotionally. This is about really seeing where we can kind of stand in a much more solid emotional way and not allow life to kind of throw us around and throw us into crisis. Expect there to be emotional purging, especially with the moon in Scorpio. This is a time where people are having these kind of like epic meltdowns. Okay, it happens. People can wake up and go, I don't understand, I'm just crying, or I just feel like my digestion is off, I can't keep anything in my system, I'm purging. These are some of the things that we see with Scorpio, because Scorpio also represents the bowels and the reproductive organs. So this can be a time that's wonderful for cleaning out your cabinets, detoxing, taking detox supplements, making a decision that you're going to be, purging, clearing, reorganizing things. And this can involve, clearing out whatever needs to go, whatever is old and outdated that's taking space in your life as well. Yes, there can be some really significant information. There can be a collective crisis, like I said, involving homes, emotions, taxes, or secrets. I anticipate there are going to be some pretty big climactic endings, but these endings are almost seen as like the dynamite, right? That's kind of blowing things up, that's preparing us for some kind of new rebuild. And I love the archetype of Scorpio. Scorpio is that connection that we have to the phoenix, which has to kind of turn to ashes only to be reborn. And it perpetuates that cycle of, burning up, dying, and then coming back to life. And it represents that eternal flame. And so that's the dance that we see between Scorpio and Taurus. We wouldn't have the garden beds and all of the beautiful trees and the fruits and the produce without the fertilizer, right? That's going to nurture and nourish that ground. And the fertilizer is made of shit, right? And that is Scorpio. It's also made of pieces and fragments of bones and other things that are going to give all the necessary minerals to that particular garden bed so everything can grow and be really healthy. That's like the sacrifice that Scorpio makes for Taurus. So when you think about it, it's like we have to take these situations and use these situations almost as fertilizer and go, okay, you know what, we're going to do something with this. This is not going to be something that's just going to sit around and fester. We're actually going to put it into something new, and we're going to use this as motivation to actually be born again or to clear something out. And yeah, like I said, fertilizing for new life to begin. So hopefully that gives you guys some insight on what to kind of expect. I'm curious to see how it's playing out for you. I would like to take you guys through the 12 rising signs and talk about where in your chart this is going to be taking place. I'm a Western astrologer. I practice Western tropical astrology. I'm not a Vedic astrologer, but if you listen to your Vedic, you can listen to your Vedic sign in correlation with this. It's going to be off by about one sign. I recommend for my predictions listening to your rising sign first. Why? Because this is going to tell you exactly what house this particular full moon is going to be taking place in. So listen to your rising sign followed by your sun and your moon sign. That is what I want you guys to listen to get a better understanding of how this is going to be kind of impacting you overall. As a reminder, if you have any planets between 3 and 5 degrees of Scorpio, if you have sun, moon, rising, or another planet there, a full moon on this axis is going to be pretty prominent for you because it's highlighting something significant relating to that planet. Don't forget the fact that Pluto is squaring. So we're going to talk about Pluto, where it is in the chart, where it's kind of bringing the heat, kind of bringing up some of this tension that's going to be brewing during the time of the full moon. I'll also let you guys know where Mars is because Mars is the co-ruler, so it's important to pay attention to that, okay? All right, let's get into it. I'm going to start first with my Aries and my Aries risings. What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. Happy full moon. A lot of what I've been saying probably resonates with you guys because I do this obviously from a 0 degrees Aries kind of viewpoint. But you'll be having your full moon in Scorpio in your natal 8th house, okay? So this is the house of transformation and resources. A Scorpio full moon here is basically going to be very strong because it's happening in its home house. This full moon may likely involve a deep transformation relating to resources, debts, intimacy, joint finances that you might have with a partner or that you may have with another person, okay? So it's bringing something to light revolving around your shared resources. It could also be inheritance. It could be an estate. It could be something revolving around taxes owed or anything like that, okay? So you could also be like alimony, child support, that stuff can come up here as well. The ruler of this particular full moon is going to be Pluto. So you're seeing the T-square actually happening like this to Pluto in your 11th house. And that can represent where there is some shift in regards to a goal, right? A goal is shifting because Pluto in the 11th means there's transformation around collective groups and money, where your information is coming from relating to money. It may mean that there can be some financial drama that can be brewing between you and another person who's borrowed from you or who you've borrowed from, or if you've given a loan to somebody, you know, this can kind of materialize as something in regards to that. But the full moon here is bringing this to a head. So you may also be kind of saying, hey, you know what? My goal was to pay off my credit cards. Boom, full moon in Scorpio. I paid off the balance. I'm out of debt. That's another way that that can kind of materialize. Now, the other thing to think about is that the 8th house is about endings, transformation, and death. So it doesn't have to be physical, but because of the square with Pluto, it can mean that there is this realization that you're like, okay, you know what, this friendship has run its course. I don't know if I can stay friends with this person. I think it's coming to an end. That's the other way it can materialize. Now, the other co-ruler is Mars, and Mars is in your 12th house, and it's also your chart ruler as well. So likely with Mars moving through your 12th house, there's this feeling of being like, I would rather be behind the scenes. I want to keep to myself. I want some privacy. I don't want any problems. I want to stay out of it. So if you are experiencing some friend drama, some financial drama, there is a sense of being like, I just need some time. You know, that's the other way that this can kind of be playing out, and feeling a little unsure about whether or not you want to talk to people about whatever you have kind of going on in your life right now. You're kind of feeling like you want to kind of hide out in your shell. Okay. So let's see what the cards say for you, Aries. The card that I get is the Queen of Cups. So this is interesting because, you know, we do see like as the moon goes through Scorpio, it's going to trine that Pisces stellium. So I think this is like really helping you get more in touch with your emotions and like better managing and dealing with your emotions. Because the Queen of Cups is about being compassionate, warm, caring, intuitive. This is also about healing and being more empathic, okay? So there can be like a woman, like a water sign. So it can be like a Cancer, Scorpio, or a Pisces that can come in that can help you do that. Or it can be you more embodying that and feeling much more tapped into your intuition when it comes to your financial situation with other people, okay? Good luck, Aries. We've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You're going to be doing this full moon Taurus in your 7th house of relationships. And it's a little intense, Taurus. So if you have any placements between like 3 and 5 degrees of Taurus, sun, moon, or rising, be mindful that this is going to be in opposition to those placements and that square to Pluto. So it's pretty gnarly. For you, my Tauruses, having a full moon in your 7th house of relationships and partnerships, okay? So Scorpio's influence here brings a lot of emotional intensity to relationships and partnerships. The full moon may require you to confront and resolve any issues in regards to your relationships. If you've been having a rocky time in relationships, it will come to a head. If you are not getting along with some kind of a partnership, it's going to come to a head. It's important that you deal with these problems head on, right? Oppositions are challenging because you're going to feel like, you know, with the sun in your 1st house, hey, I want to do what I want to do. And you may feel like there are things coming from outside of you that are impacting you. These things that are impacting you can be conflict with a partnership, which is kind of inhibiting or creating some challenges with your career or with your work, because it is squaring Pluto in the 10th house. So it's interesting because Pluto rules your 7th house. So whether this is issues with a client, with a business partner, challenges with a spouse or with a romantic partner, you can feel like they're impacting each other. And you can also feel like some kind of status is up for a change. So for some Taurus and Taurus risings who have been experiencing some challenges in relationships, this can be like that finale that's like, okay, the relationship is done. We have to move on. We have to cut ties, you know, and how is this impacting my reputation or my professional life? So you may cut ties with somebody that you work with, and then you kind of have to tell other people at work, okay, I'm leaving. It can also, for those of you guys who are in serious committed relationships or marital relationships, it can be that there is some kind of dramatic kind of conclusion that happens with a relationship to another person. And that square is them saying to you, you know what, I'm done, and how that kind of like shocks you and could potentially change your status here as well. You know, I know a lot of this sounds pretty gnarly, but, you know, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I mean, I think that with Mars being the co-ruler and Mars hanging out in the 11th house, you know, there's something to be said about the fact that it is possible that you may not be on the same page as your partner in regards to your goals, right? It may also mean that some of the conflict that's brewing at the time of the full moon is with a friendship, because Mars is in your area of friendship. So it may mean that, you know, you're having to kind of cut ties with a friend, and that's the conclusion or the completion that's kind of coming up for you. It may not necessarily be your romantic partner or your spouse. Because Pluto in Aquarius might mean that you're like, okay, in a very public way, I'm changing something about my relationship to another person. The 11th house also represents like other people and other people's children. So it can mean that there's some conflict maybe that you have with like a friend because like your kids aren't getting along, or it might mean that you and your partner aren't on the same page about, you know, kids or raising kids or having kids. And like that is the catalyst for, you know, some bigger discussions about whether or not you guys are going to actually stay together. So that's something else to kind of like consider in the midst of some of the stuff going on. All these planets getting ready to come into your first house, and also the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction can really represent breaking free or breaking away from something that does not feel authentic, right? All right, so here is the card that you get, the Fool card, right? The card that represents Uranus. So it is kind of saying you're like, okay, I'm leaving something behind, right? And it can mean that you're dancing off very quickly, but it can also mean that there is a promise of like new beginnings. This is about being original, fearless, free spirit, taking chances, new paths, and a leap of faith. So it can mean that you're like, okay, I don't know if this is the best thing to do, but I feel like this is what I need. I need to break away from something. So you may actually feel like the stuff that's coming up with a partner is like setting you up to basically do that. Or they may be kind of setting you free and you're like, okay, fine, you know what, it's good. I think we're on the same page, and you guys may decide to go your separate ways. But it does look like whatever changes happen, these are positive changes, because the Fool is saying like he's looking at the situation as an opportunity to go and do something new. Good luck, Taurus. We've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You guys will be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 6th house. All right, Gemini, so full moon in Scorpio in your 6th house relating to health and routine, okay? So health, routine, your coworkers, your area of work, your pets, these are all things that come up with the 6th house. This can be a full moon that encourages you to focus on healthier habits, where you are letting go of toxic emotions, letting go of bad habits, finally starting to see, hopefully, some positive results relating to your health or your routine. It's a good time to address any habits that are affecting your overall well-being. And, you know, we've got a number of planets in the 12th house, which represents kind of like the subconscious and like the emotional body. We've got a full moon in the 6th house, which can be saying like, this is where it's showing you, hey, these things are kind of coming up for you physically because they may or may not be dealt with emotionally. And of course, it is squaring Pluto in Aquarius in your 9th. So a simple solution to this, there is no easy way out, right? You guys have it a little bit easier, definitely the mutable signs than the fixed signs. But I think about how, you know, Pluto in the 9th house might mean you're adopting a new philosophy about health. You're learning about a new technique or learning from a new practitioner. There can be you trying a different kind of like health modality. And that's like the way out of it, right? So it means that you need somebody who's powerful, who can help show you, you know, the higher meaning or the higher purpose of life, or how to get out of addictive or, you know, kind of bad habits. Or maybe there is some kind of combination of like faith or spirituality that also kind of bridges into this. So it can be like a program or something that could help you do that. I do feel like when there's a full moon in the 6th house, if there are some health related issues that are kind of underlining, they come up. But I also think about how this full moon relates to your coworkers and your office space and your daily routine, and how Mars is in your 10th house and it's kind of conjunct Saturn as well as Neptune. So it can materialize more as am I managing my time efficiently? You know, am I getting my work done the way that I need to? Am I receiving the support that I need from my coworkers or from my bosses? And are you just feeling like really overworked? And can there be a sense of just feeling like your schedule is kind of like chaotic and hectic? This can also bring about changes to your routine as a result of like travel or things relating to school or education. So these things with Pluto in the square can definitely impact your ability to feel like you can kind of get things done in a timely manner. Focus on your health. And I would say that what's beneficial is that you are starting to see Mercury, you know, get ready to go direct. So it looks like you're getting straight with your goals. And even though Pluto is like a negative kind of energy in this particular full moon, it's still trining you by sign. So the more that you're learning, the more that you're communicating, the more that you're open to changing your belief system, or the more that you're willing to kind of expand when it comes to new, healthier habits and practices. Pluto in Aquarius can bring learning more about astrology and health. It can bring learning about energy healing and, you know, practitioners and people from other places who can kind of teach you about like biofeedback and other things that are kind of futuristic to really help kind of clear your body out. The card that I get for you is the Two of Cups. So this is a positive card. This is a card about harmony and working together and relationships. This is about being unified and having a connection to another person. This can also be about mutual respect, joining forces, close bonds, right? So usually this is a card that deals with relationships, which is interesting. Because, you know, your relationship lord is Jupiter, and Jupiter is meeting Uranus in the 12th house. So it can mean that maybe there's strengthening of bonds and relationships behind the scenes. Maybe there is some kind of couples therapy happening. Maybe there is a sense of you focusing on strengthening your bonds with coworkers and collaborating with other people and feeling supported. If you are feeling like you're going through a difficult time finding a job or finding some kind of solution to a health problem, ask somebody else for support, because that Two of Cups means somebody's on the way to help you with these situations. Good luck. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You are going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 5th house. For you, Cancer, Scorpio is a friendly sign. It's a sister sign. So if you have any placements between 3, 4, 5 degrees of Cancer, this full moon will be trining your sun, moon, or rising. So this is going to create a free flow energy, which is emotional, it's romantic, it's creative, okay? So a full moon for you in your 5th house of creativity and romance, pleasure, taking chances. This is a pretty nice full moon, to be honest with you. This brings Scorpio's intensity to your creativity and sense of passion. So a full moon here may inspire you to explore new creative outlets or deepen your involvement in existing hobbies or relationships. So this is a time where you may be feeling like you're ready to launch something creative out into the world. There may be big news revolving around a new romantic connection. You might have a first date. Somebody might say, I love you. There can be news in the lives of your children. There can be this feeling of wanting to take more chances that can be happening. And you're going to actually kind of benefit from the moon transit even after the full moon is exact, because the moon's going to trine planets in your 9th house and also your ascendant. So you're going to have a grand water trine. This means that there is this sense of feeling like in flow with your creativity. You're feeling more confident. You know that it's going to require you to overcome your fears, to jump into a new relationship or launch a business or show some kind of talent, but you're up for it. And you also know that this is about you growing in a sense of your belief about relationships, about business, about travel. And you may feel like you have to travel somewhere or do something or learn something in order to kind of really rouse these kind of feelings and these emotions about your creativity. Now in the background, we've got Pluto as the ruler, and it is squaring this. So it does mean that if you want to have this completion, right? If you want to have something that's going to be launched or fulfilled or some kind of creative thing that's going to come to fruition, it's going to receive some sort of pressure from your 8th house Pluto transit. So it can mean that you're like, okay, I'm taking money out of savings to launch a business, or I have to get a business loan in order to kind of get my company up and running, or maybe, you know, you're pulling assets or resources
for your own creative endeavor from some kind of friend who offers you a job or they want to pay you for your services, right? Pluto in the 8th house can be other people. So especially with like the sun in the 11th house of others and that Pluto square, it does make me feel like there's some strings attached, there's some conditions attached. This can also bring some complications when it comes to emotions, dating, and romantic feelings, where you're kind of crossing the line between being friends or being something more. So keep that in the back of your mind. The co-ruler is also Mars. And so Mars being in between Saturn, which is your relationship lord, and Neptune, does indicate that it is very likely there is something brewing about doing work and having to travel, or somebody who wants you to come and work with them or for them, or some kind of training that might be kind of coming up in order to further your career. I'm not worried about it because it's trining your sign, so I think you're going to be good. I really feel like this is a time to take chances and really be optimistic about what the future holds. The card that you get is the Ace of Wands. So this is about initiations and new beginnings. This is a great card for you, Cancer. I think this is about a new project. And I think that this is also about feeling inspired and ignited passions, new opportunities, growth, potential, energy, creative spark, and feeling enthusiastic. So that's all the things related to the 5th house. I mean, I do think that this is a house that generally is connected to life. And so you may realize that in order to, bring this new thing to fruition, you have to be willing to take a chance. And it may feel risky financially maybe, or it may feel like it's getting out of your comfort zone, but I think for you, it's going to be very positive. Obviously, 5th house can also be a result of some kind of dramatic change, like I said, for your children or involving children. So sometimes we see pregnancies relating to this full moon as well. Good luck. So we've got Leo and Leo rising. You're going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 4th house. For you, Leo, this is all about home and family. Now, this may feel rather intense for Leo because you guys are obviously Leo, sun, moon, or rising. We've got the full moon in Scorpio, which opposes the sun in Taurus, and this is squaring Pluto. So Leos and Leo risings, hang on to your shorts. This is going to feel like a big one, okay? Especially if you have any placements between 4 and I would say, 3 and 5 degrees of Taurus. This is where you're, 3 and 5 degrees of Leo. This is where you're going to be feeling this the most. I'm looking at all the fixed signs. So if you have anything there, this full moon in your 4th house is going to light your chart up like a Christmas tree. It's going to create a grand fixed cross in your chart. And that is going to feel like a 4-way stop where whatever kind of full moon things happening at home or for you emotionally or in your private life is impacting relationships, work, and also you. So just kind of brace for impact. I do think that, a full moon with Scorpio's influence in your 4th house may bring up some deep-seated emotions relating to family and home. I've seen people find out that they're being evicted with this. I've seen people find out that they have to move. I've seen some kind of drama sometimes come up with the family because Scorpio moon, it's a difficult placement. So be mindful that whatever is kind of brewing within the home and the family or the home front is likely going to be something that's very potent. Now, it could be something positive where you're like, you know what, I want to move, or I'm ready to, go and look for a new apartment, or I'm ready to sell my house, or I'm already planning on moving back home with mom. Like, these things can happen too. So I'm not saying this to kind of scare you, but it's complex because you're being pulled between the moon and the 4th house where it's comfortable. It likes being in the 4th house. But you have all this energy in the 10th house, which is relating to career growth and being out in the world and things going on to your responsibility when it comes to your professional life and how you're seen out in the world. And so there's a lot of having to show up for that right now. And so you might kind of feel a little scattered when this moon comes through the 4th house and you're like, okay, but people don't know how much hard work, sacrifice, letting go, determination, pain is actually coming from this success. And that might be something that kind of plays out. So watch for deep-seated emotions relating to home and family. It's definitely time to confront and heal from past family issues and trauma. I do feel like the square that's going to be happening with this full moon to Pluto in the 7th house is really pointing to your relationships. Now, Pluto rules family, right? It's connected to your 4th house. So it can mean that you're having to confront Power struggles in your home. So it could be, antagonistic, family members. It could be difficult roommates. It could mean that there is a real kind of combative situation going on with a romantic relationship. And you're like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to live here. Or, telling people that they need to pack their bags and kind of get out. But there can also be a sense of executing and like having better emotional boundaries and like being like, yeah, I'm not allowing this person to come into my personal space, or I'm not going to continue a relationship with certain relatives if I'm not feeling like safe or secure. But those of you guys who are in relationships, there can definitely be some tricky situations happening with Pluto being here, because it's going to make Pluto the focal point of the square, which means another person, be that a romantic partner, a client, Aquarius, could be friends, are going through some kind of crisis. And you're like, I don't know if I can deal with this, right? Now, Mars is also the co-ruler. So Mars is going to be moving through, obviously, Pisces. It's in your 8th house in conjunction to Saturn, which rules relationships, and Neptune. So perhaps some of the challenges that are kind of coming up with, your home and your family is like cost of living expenses, whether or not your partner feels like stressed out about what they can or cannot afford, because your 8th house is other people's money. So Mars and Saturn there makes them feel like, I don't know if I can cover these expenses, or I can't get rent this month, or, they may not be working. There can also be some struggles that can be coming up, power struggles about whether or not, they're feeling like they're getting what they need from you, or vice versa. There can be a sense of you being like, I'm covering everything, I'm paying for everything, and I'm sick of doing it. So some of the conflict can actually be kind of stemming from whether or not there's enough give or take going on in finances between you and another person, or feeling like you have to fight for what's yours. So watch for that. The card that I get for you is the King of Cups. So this is a positive card. This is about being really aware of your emotions. This is also about being dedicated and devoted, emotionally mature, balanced, intuitive, compassionate, supportive. So I think a lot of this is kind of tapping in on, basically Mars in your 8th house. It's being like, I understand why you're frustrated and upset. Like, let's work through it. It can also mean that you're working with like a therapist or somebody who's helping you develop stronger, emotional awareness, or like working through some like blockages or hangups, because Saturn does deal with like support from others and really helping you overcome some of your past traumas or like family tendencies. So that way you feel like it's not like replicating in your own life or in your own relationships. Watch for support that can come from a Cancer, Pisces, or a Scorpio, because the King of Cups can be about a water sign, or it can just be somebody who's there for you during an emotionally trying time. Good luck, Leo. We have Virgo and Virgo rising. You will be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your 3rd house. For you, Virgo, this is all about communication and learning. The 3rd house I call the junk drawer in astrology. You guys have heard me say that. It's everything from siblings and, extended family members to our neighbors, our vehicles, our gadgets. But at the end of the day, it's about the mind and communication and how we can kind of get the point across. So a full moon in Scorpio here can definitely highlight communication and learning experiences. It can give you the ability to have more depth when it comes to talking about your feelings. It can prompt moves and also opportunities to delve into topics of interest that have something to do with Scorpio things. So like metaphysics, occult related things. There can also be changes or transformations, pertaining to your car or your vehicle. That can be coming up here as well with a full moon in Scorpio. Now, the difficulty is the square to Pluto. So you've got the sun in Taurus, the moon in Scorpio, and it's squaring Pluto in your 6th house, where it looks like there can be some challenges revolving around like your day-to-day habits and routines. Maybe you're trying to have a breakthrough in how you're thinking about change, or how you're thinking about, shifts within your workspace or within your health. It may be beneficial actually to be mindful of some of the communication that kind of comes up during the full moon, because it's going to be showing you where negative thought patterning, negative communication, stress in communication can all be kind of prompting some kind of health challenges or things pertaining to issues with habits. The other connection to this is Mars, and Mars is hanging out in your 7th house where it's been really close to Saturn and Neptune. So likely, in relationships, there's been this feeling of like having to work harder to relate to other people. And it doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or a coworker or whatever. And those of you guys who are single, there can be this feeling of being like, I'm trying to meet somebody, but nothing's working, or nothing's coming through, or I'm not meeting the people that I want because Mars has been kind of like in this little bit of a pickle where it's been conjunct Saturn where it feels limited. It is possible that, there can be partnerships who are pushing you to communicate more effectively or to work through habits and patterns. And, you're seeing some challenges or upheaval in relationships because they're basically saying to you, you need to talk about your feelings more, or you need to overcome this problem, or you need to kind of, talk to me about things and like really open up. Obviously, an eclipse and a retrograde in your 8th has been really having to dig deep and doing a lot of like self-evaluation and asking yourself, what am I afraid of? What do I need to change? What have I been hiding that's maybe keeping me away from having true intimacy or connection with other people? So this full moon, I think, is beneficial in a sense where it's trying to get you to really pay attention to how you're thinking, how you're communicating, not kind of shooting down ideas before you're able to really give them a solid shot and making change. Pay attention to communication, to contracts, anything you sign, anything like that, because this can be really important as well, because it does seem like there can be some hangups revolving around timing or details that should not be missed. The card that I get for you is the Sun, okay? So the Sun really deals with happiness, joy, overcoming something, right? This is about also feeling like you're more confident and optimistic about what is happening. So for me, this is, I think, talking about the Sun in Taurus. And so as these planets are going through Taurus, they're all going to be trining Virgo. So yeah, maybe you've had some challenges or setbacks with relationships, or maybe you've had some challenges in communication, but you're trying to look at the bright side of things with the Sun in the 9th house, and you're like, yeah, well, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm more optimistic about the future. I'm learning not to see things as everything is terrible or be super critical of stuff. You're seeing whatever is kind of unfolding as an adventure and an opportunity to kind of really change your perspective about the world. So very good light energy in the midst of what can feel like a pretty heavy full moon. Good luck. We have Libra and Libra rising. You're going to be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your natal 2nd house. Okay, so for you, Libra, the 2nd house is all about your finances and your values, okay? So this is about money, resources, banking, personal possessions, and self-esteem. Now, a full moon here for you is going to bring a focus to financial matters, and it's also about your personal values. This period, you can be reevaluating your financial habits and desire to align your spending with your core values. Now, sometimes when I see a full moon in the 2nd house, there is some payment that comes due or something you have to pay off or some major purchase. It is possible, especially being, that this full moon is hitting the 2nd and the 8th house axis. It may mean that you're anticipating that there is some kind of growth in your resources, so you are wanting to cash in on that, or you're wanting to spend it in some way. Obviously, this is a bit tricky because the full moon will come into a square with Pluto in your 5th house. So Pluto in the 5th house is basically saying that some of the transformation of your wealth is actually coming from taking chances. It's coming from being creative. It's coming from being self-employed, gambling, or even, how children are having an impact on your finances. How dating and self-love is impacting your self-esteem and also your resources. So that's the other theme. These are financial houses, 2nd house of what you possess, 5th house of chances, 8th house of other people's money. So when you have this full moon that's making Pluto the focal point, I think really what it's saying is that big risk, big reward, right? If you're willing to take big risks, it may pay off in a big way. And certainly some of the themes for Libra risings with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the 8th house is more. You're receiving more from, spousal kind of connection, more from inheritances, but also it could be you have a business that's doing very well, and you made more money than you anticipated, so there's more taxes, or there's some kind of like exchange that's kind of going on there, right? More money, more problems. So this could also be where children are influencing something about your financial situation, and you may be kind of going back and forth and debating whether or not, well, should I be making this expense because I may be having to pay for something for a kid, or there may be something relating to a child. Fifth house is also like stock market and kind of gambling and things like that. So a full moon here square Pluto can kind of indicate that there can be some pretty radical swings back and forth with your finances throughout this next month. Now, Mars is the co-ruler, and Mars is hanging out in your 6th house. It has been in some sticky territory, even though it likes going through the 6th house where it can work. It's been in conjunction to Saturn, so there has been a lot of feeling like you've had to make sacrifices and kind of giving long hours to work or to doing stuff around the home or with family. And, Mars being in that connection between Saturn and then eventually Neptune is also kind of saying, like, with this full moon, you may be actually making a big change to your health, to your diet. You might decide, you know what, I'm no longer eating this thing, or I'm cutting this thing out. For a lot of Libras and Libra risings, I think Saturn going through the 6th house has been about hard work and dedication to having a new routine, whether that's just being active or, being sober or cutting back on certain habits. Now, as Mars is approaching Neptune, I feel like this is going to be about this realization that what you're eating, what you're consuming has an impact on you as well. And so some of you guys might decide, you know what, I'm doing a hot water detox in the morning, right? Very Mars, Neptune. Or I'm going to start doing laps in a pool, or I'm going to use a sauna. Things of that kind of combination might start kind of popping up for you, where you're implementing new ways of being able to kind of detox, which could better be kind of impacting your health. So you may be spending more money on things relating to health, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. Let's give you guys a tarot card. Let's see what the cards say. You get the 4 of Cups. Okay, so this is about feeling kind of like disappointed. This is also a card that's about like contemplation and reevaluation and feeling unfulfilled, missed opportunities, feeling discontent. So, a full moon in Scorpio in your 2nd house, in theory, can be like, okay, there's this big kind of thing that's kind of popped up that's potentially, oh, I got a check in the mail, or, I ended up getting some money back for something, or, I ended up kind of getting a bonus, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. And I think that could be the moon in Scorpio. It's like, it wasn't exactly the way that I thought it was going to play out. So it is about being appreciative of what you do receive in this particular transit, and not being too fixated on what you didn't get, right? Kind of looking at things as glass is half full. Good luck, Libra. We have Scorpio and Scorpio rising. What's going on, guys? Obviously, this is a full moon for you in your sign. So if you have any placements between 3 and 5 degrees of Scorpio, this will be impacting you pretty significantly. Think back to last year. What goals were you setting for yourself around your birthday? What was going on? Where did you feel like this burning need and desire to create change? How could you forget that new moon? It opposed Uranus in your 7th house. So likely you were feeling a little bit fierce, a little feisty, and wanting to do something different, and wanting to either change yourself, change your direction, focus on your goals, be more independent, and how that was going to bring up some relational issues with other people. So a full moon in the 1st house is about self and identity, okay? So if you've been crazy about transformation, if you've been focusing on bettering yourself, bettering your life, healing yourself, changing your image, your body, whatever, this can be the time where that becomes full, and you can kind of see that, right? With the full moon in your 1st house. But this also might be about more so deeply emotionally exploring your identity and being more aware of your self-perception. When the moon's in your 1st house, you're also more emotional. So you might be more sensitive during the time of this full moon and aware of things that are kind of going on outside of you that impact you psychically or emotionally. It's definitely a time to confront and release any negative self-image or self-doubt. Okay, that's really important, because the moon in Scorpio can be about being super harsh and critical on yourself. I think about how, we're going to see this opposition that is playing out between the sun in the 7th house. So the sun in the 7th house is about partnership. And the sun in the 7th house in Taurus wants pleasure, and it wants stability, and it wants resources and life. And you may notice that you're just a little bit more prickly during this time because the moon in your sign makes you emotional. The ruler of this moon is Pluto, and you are Pluto and Mars. So depending on which system you follow, a full moon in Scorpio that's going to square Pluto means that you are the driving force for some kind of significant change within your home or within your family or relationships. Pluto is, I don't like using the term good and bad because I believe Pluto there's a purpose, right? There's a reason for whatever Pluto is going to do during this full moon. But because you are Pluto, it's like if you are not self-aware of some of your bad behaviors, and it can be self-undoing, it could be addiction issues, it could be fear, it could be jealousy, holding on to grudges, whatever. If you're not aware that you're doing this, what's going to happen with the full moon is that it's going to come out of the blue and oppose the sun, and it's going to create some major power struggles within either you in a relationship to a partner or with a relationship to a home or family member, okay? And so because Pluto is the focal point, it can mean, hey, there's a full moon where there is some kind of crisis that comes out of the blue for you emotionally, or something that happens at home or with family. And it brings up this theme where you're highly emotional and not dealing with something very well, and then creates some strife in your relationship to someone else. This is coming on the backs of also a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, where it seems to me like my Scorpio risings are kind of like falling into two camps. I'm seeing the people who have been single for some time that have like suddenly met somebody and the relationship is speeding up very quickly, and like there's lots of excitement, and people who are like traveling together or talking about getting married or starting families. And then I'm seeing the other Scorpio risings that for the most part are having a lot of problems, and they're having a lot of issues with relationships, primarily because their partners are kind of getting to a point with the 7th house Jupiter-Uranus where they're extremely frustrated, or they're impatient, or they want freedom. And so what you're going to see is that if you're not completely in control of your emotions during this full moon, you're going to set partners off. And when I say partners, it could be business partners, it could be friends, it could be spouses. And you could see a pretty significant showdown on the home front where whatever kind of blows up will materialize as like a huge change at home. Now, if you're single, a full moon here with the moon coming into your first house could definitely put you in a position of being like, I want to get out of the house, I want to do something. And like it could act like a magnet where it could just bring somebody right to you, And there are good things coming. Venus is going to go into your 7th house, and things like that are going to kind of materialize pretty soon. But after seeing in real life some Scorpio risings, and also seeing, the last month or so, a lot of clients, there is this subconscious unawareness, I think, that's going on for a lot of Scorpio risings, where they're not realizing that the unwillingness to kind of remove all of these old, outdated emotional patterns are actually what's driving a lot of the conflict with other people, and like keeping them from being able to have closeness and togetherness. So they start to see a lot of impatientness that's going on with their relationships. And they're like, why is this happening? Because you guys aren't changing, So just some food for thought. I would say just be ready to confront any negative self-image, self-doubt, anything you need to clear out. Mars being the co-ruler of this in your 5th house, which has met with Saturn, basically means there's been some difficult things when it comes to being kind to yourself, expressing yourself, being open to love. There may also be some difficult conversations about children in your childhood, or working through some inner child hangups, or a difficult time communicating with kids. Pretty soon Mars is going to hit Neptune, and that can be a time that can be great for creativity and inspiration, and anything if you're in like the arts or anything creative. But it can also be a time where you're not seeing yourself very clearly, and if you're not totally conscious and aware of the fact that you may be holding yourself back or not be showing enough emotion, you can start to kind of see where there can be some challenges. This is also sextiling Jupiter and Uranus. So some kind of holding back of being kind, or holding back of being emotionally available, can also create some disruptions, in relationships. All right, so the card that I get for you is the Hanged Man. Can't say I'm surprised. This is very much like this Pisces energy down here. You know, Mars is conjuncting Neptune, so it's very Hanged Man. It's like, I'm just gonna hold and see what happens. This is about pause, surrender, letting go, waiting, new perspective, wisdom, sacrifice, uncertainty, and contemplation. So quite literally, you know, the full moon in your first house in opposition to the 7th square Pluto is about if something is ending for you within relationships or home, or just personally, you're like, this is the end of the road for this situation. I have to be done with it. Giving yourself time to kind of rebalance and reflect on what's happening and, you know, focus on observing what's kind of coming to an end rather than reacting to it, right? Good luck, Scorpio. We've got Sag and Sag rising. You guys are going to be doing the full moon that's going to be in Scorpio in your natal 12th house. All right, so for you, Sagittarius, this can be an interesting one because this definitely represents things that kind of like go bump in the night, right? The 12th house Scorpio could definitely represent clearing out all the cobwebs of your like subconscious fears. This is about spirituality. This is about closure. This is about self-undoing and things that we don't see coming. Scorpio's energy in the 12th house is deeply spiritual and introspective. And I also think that when you have a full moon in the 12th house, it's a time to like really take time to be alone. So you have the capabilities of like sleeping well, meditating, like reevaluating like what's coming up for you that needs to be like completed, and, you know, really being focused on your spiritual journey and like getting closure, especially relating to trauma. And I keep using the word trauma, but like Scorpio is very much connected to that. Pluto is very much connected to that. So this can be a time where it's about facing your fears. It can be a time where you're having some kind of like, you know, therapy appointment and you're unpacking something that's like super heavy. It could be a time where you have, you know, nightmares about something. That could also happen here, that you're having to kind of clear out. And the 12th house represents hidden places, being in private, you know, going to temples, churches, hospitals. So it can be a time where, you know, you're having to go and be in a place or be alone somewhere where you can kind of process this stuff. Now, at the time of the full moon, it's going to square Pluto in your 3rd. So you've got the 12th house, which represents emotional and kind of psychological health. You've got the 6th house, which represents, you know, physical health, habits, and routines. And then the square to Pluto can literally mean that there is something that is kind of popping its head out for you mentally that is kind of creating some challenges. It can be some really intense communication, some breakdowns perhaps that can be happening in terms of how you think, how you communicate, some difficult conversations that can pop up, or crisis relating to siblings and, you know, talking to siblings and dealing with a family matter. Or maybe, you know, there's some kind of crisis that pops up that you didn't see coming, you know, relating to a car that breaks down, or a phone that, you know, burns out, or a tablet that breaks, which number one, you know, upsets you because then you don't have something that you can kind of watch, but it also upsets you because it's going to potentially impact your productivity. So be mindful that, you know, this is an energy that will probably come out of left field. You're not going to see it coming. Now, the other thing to think about is, when we have, you know, Mars is the co-ruler. Mars is hanging out in your 4th house in Pisces. And so it's been in conjunction to Saturn and Neptune, where likely recently there's been this sense of being like, man, I'm constantly fixing things at home, and there's stuff that's like breaking down, or I'm having stuff that's leaking, or, you know, it's like this never ending list of things that you're needing to kind of invest time, money, or energy into when it comes to your home base. If not, it may mean that you've been feeling very emotionally blocked, limited, stuck at home. Maybe you have been feeling like you have been just, you know, inundated with a lot of responsibility when it comes to taking care of like home or family matters. So if there has been a lot of like having to deal with home fixing or family caretaking, I could definitely see this Pluto square materializing as like a really nasty phone call to like a sibling that's like, it's your turn to take care of mom. I can't do this anymore. Or a text message or an email that you have to send a contractor that's like, and now this went wrong in the house. You need to come and fix it right now. So you can go 0 to crazy real quick with this square. So just be mindful that we want to be communicating in a way that's powerful, but not not overdoing it, not demanding, right? And like not feeling like you're just like completely losing your mind because things are falling apart. Take a second, ground your energy, regroup, meditate, get some rest, get some sleep, be alone for a little bit. That'll be really helpful in helping kind of clear some of the static that's coming with Pluto in your third house. The positive is also, this comes right on the other side of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's been in your your sixth house. So this has been going through the area of health. And so I think with Uranus being the ruler of your third house, I mean, some Sagittarius and Sagittarius risings might be like feeling like they're like, I'm on the verge of having a nervous breakdown. Like, I just need to stop. And if you're feeling that way, this is really trying to liberate you from your day-to-day routines. It's trying to get you to say, you know what, that's it. You know what, I'm sending that email out saying I have to take, some personal days, or I am, going on a road trip and I need to be off the grid for a little bit. I'm going offline. It is putting up your email, delays and letting people, you'll get back to it when you come back to the office. And really transforming something about the way that you communicate with people, because if you don't do that, then you're going to feel like you're just not ever really getting a break, Anyway, let's see what the cards say for you. The card that you get is the Nine of Cups. So this is super positive, guys. In the world of some really difficult full moon aspects, you guys are doing pretty well with the cards. So Nine of Cups is getting what you want. Right? And so I think like the 12th house, it can also be about like manifestation and what we're thinking about and like what we give energy to and whether or not that materializes and becomes real. And Scorpio can be very nightmarish. So I would say be cautious against what you're giving your energy to, like what you're thinking about, what you're kind of like obsessing over, because you want to be putting that energy towards things that are positive. You want to be thinking about all of the good things that are coming, not fixating on the bad things. So be mindful of your communication and how you think and like what you're saying, because there's a lot of power with Pluto in the third house to speaking, writing, thinking, saying things out loud. Like words are spells in themselves. So really use the energy to focus on what you do want and what is happening and the fact that things are going your way, and you want to visualize that rather than kind of getting in your head about what's not working and like grinding your teeth, Anyway, good luck, Sag. Let me know how that goes. We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You will be doing this full moon in Scorpio in your 11th house. Okay, so this is a fun place to have a full moon. This is all about friendship, community, parties, gatherings, wish fulfillment. It can be a time where you're socializing and you're around other people. It can be a time also that is bringing a lot of emotional depth and support from friends and community involvement. So a full moon here is going to involve a reevaluation, I think, of your social connections and desire for more deep and meaningful connections, basically. So full moons can bring about, okay, going to a party or, like connecting with a group that you belong to, or starting a group, or seeing, some kind of big meeting that kind of transpires. At the time of this full moon, we are going to see that it is going to be squaring Pluto in your second house, okay? So it does tell me that there is definitely a sense of feeling like, do I value the people who I'm friends with? What are they bringing to the table? Do I have a core solid group of people that I can rely on, that I know have my back when I'm in need, and vice versa? This can be, am I being that person to other people as well? This can also be team meetings or union meetings or some kind of, group decisions that are being made about budgeting and financing and things pertaining to like your salary or what you're getting paid. This can be how politics and things that are going on in the world are impacting your physical or your financial security as well. I think about how the square to Pluto is definitely going to say, there's going to be some things going on with your relationship to friends that are going to show you quite literally where you stand and whether or not you feel solid or secure or valued or wanted or chosen. And this can be good or bad. This can be people who are like, hey, we're doing this thing. We want to involve you. We want you to be a part of the team. And you're like, yes, I feel good. This is empowering me, making me feel like I have more opportunities to grow my finances. But there can also be things that are going on where you feel excluded from certain connections and communities, or you're like, why am I spending all of this money to be a part of this union and paying these union dues when I'm, not getting gigs, or I don't feel like I'm getting enough, work in to kind of like really, get the benefits of being a part of this group. There can also be opportunities to join or get accepted into groups, but it's going to come at a cost, right? Pluto in your second house. When it comes to investments and financial things, be mindful of whose advice you buy. Certainly with that Scorpio moon in its fall, it can mean that there's somebody giving you advice about money and investments and finances, and it may potentially be detrimental to your financial situation. So I would not be going off and investing in a bunch of stuff that some friend is recommending without kind of doing your due diligence to make sure that it makes sense. I especially think this is true with the opposition to your fifth house and the sun transits, where there can definitely be some sense of wild opportunities to kind of like gamble or invest in things or kind of trade things that can go a little bit haywire. Now, the other thing you want to think about is Mars being the ruler. And so Mars being the ruler in Pisces in your third house has been about communication and movement and exchange of messages and like learning. Recently, Mars has come into conjunction with Saturn, which maybe makes you feel as if you're a bit mentally burnt out, or you're feeling like it's difficult to communicate or to kind of get the point across to people. Maybe you've had some issues revolving around documents, paperwork, siblings, and maybe during the time of this full moon, as the moon is going through Scorpio and it trines all of this, that you're like, I'm just having such a difficult time. Like, I just need someone to talk to. And you may find a friend that could be Scorpio based, or somebody who's kind of Scorpio like, that's like going to tell it to you straight, and give you the advice that you need, and help you work through some of the blockages that you've been having, or kind of like reassure you that, you're making the right decisions or you're doing what you need to do. Perhaps also this can be about moving or movement, or changes with vehicles that can be coming up as well. And so you can be kind of talking about that with another person and kind of bouncing ideas off of them. Totally possible, especially with the retrograde in your fourth house. I think a lot of you guys have been kind of feeling that. But the fourth house, the 11th house full moon is about a completion of goals, right? And so I think a lot of this is, if you've been wanting something to happen, or if you've been wanting to share something with a group of people, right? You're getting ready to do that. And it's the impact that that's going to have on you, either financially or in a sense of your self-esteem. So you might put something out in the world, you show it with people, and then it's like, oh, this is suddenly changing things for me. And like now, I'm able to make more money because the right person kind of saw or talked about what I created and what I put out there. So your connection to people seems to be very important. So the more connected you are, the more likely you're going to see that this will materialize as some positive manifestations of financial change. The card that I get for you is the Empress. Okay, great card. This is about abundance. This is about resources. This is about something you create. It's about maternal energies, divine feminine energy, pregnancy, beauty, sexuality, care, nurturing, and Mother Earth. This is also a card that deals with Venus, right? And so at the time, Venus is hanging out in your fourth house and it's getting ready to kind of move into your fifth house, where you recently had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Will there be a lot of, Capricorn and Capricorn risings that are announcing pregnancy soon? Yes, from that conjunction. So it can mean that there is something that you've created, or something that is growing, or some kind of project or some kind of life that you're like, boom, sharing with a group of people, putting it on, social media or whatever. And there in turn, then people are like, oh my God, I want to send you a gift. That could be the square to Pluto. So it could be, showing you that wealth or resources are transformative through a connection with other people. But I think that this is also about realizing that you're going to be receiving resources as well. It's not just about what you create and what you grow. It's what you're bringing in through nurturing connections with other people. Good luck, Capricorn. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising, okay? Are you guys the villains? I feel like you and Scorpio are the guys, the villains this particular lunation. As much as I hate to say it, we'll have to see. But you'll be having this full moon in Scorpio, which is going to be in your 10th house of career, okay? It'll be at 4 degrees, by the way. The wheel's a little bit forward, but it'll be at 4 degrees. And it'll be in your career zone. And when you have a full moon in your 10th house, this is about pretty significant changes pertaining to your professional life and your career. So 10th house is going to be all about career, public image, your reputation. And I think a full moon with Scorpio's intensity here is going to be about dramatic sweeping changes to your reputation. The full moon may require you to confront any issues in your professional life or make changes to align your career with your true passions. So a full moon is a completion. So a full moon in the 10th house could be I quit or I accept the job. It could be, some dramatic shakeup happened at work and now suddenly, I'm in charge, or I'm having to be a manager, or I'm changing departments. It could be that you're deciding to retire, right? It could be that you're realizing that you're spent with the, current kind of career that you've been doing for a long period of time and you're itching and you're ready for a change. Be very careful, Aquarius, okay? With a full moon in your 10th house in general, if it's not aspected, it can be a time where there's more eyes on you, and that can be good if you have good aspects because you can, use it to your advantage and be like, launching products or, launching businesses or websites or doing it, kind of like meetings and interviews and getting a lot of recognition. But unfortunately, this is not one of those full moons because you're going to see that it's going to be not just in Scorpio, but it's squaring Pluto in your sign. And so because Pluto represents your status, right, 10th house Lord, and it's on the ascendant, it could mean that there is some dramatic change coming at work as a result of you being like, I'm done, or, some gnarly kind of characteristics of Pluto can kind of come through, and you can have some power struggles with people at work, or there can be people that are trying to kind of paint you out to being like a dictator at work. This can also be coming through in regards to home and family as well. Pluto is in your sign, right? Especially if you're anywhere from like that 0 to about 5 degrees of Aquarius. This is representing you going through those birthing pains and like needing to go through a major change or a transformation of who you are. And that is what's springing the changes with your career and also with your home. This is you kind of breaking out of the shell, being like, I need to change. I don't resonate with this anymore, or this job has to change, or this home or family situation has to change. So you're creating it. The other thing I would think about is that, you got this sun that's in your 4th house. And so as the sun and other planets are moving through your 4th house, it's about where you are in your home life. Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel stable? What are you building? What are you growing? What's going on in your private life? So you may be saying, you know what, I'm kind of done focusing on what's going on with my career. I need a change, and like I want to have a more simple life, or I would rather, make a home, or I would rather, get into hobbies or gardening, or I would rather go and move to a new location or live with a group of friends. I mean, there's so many things here. You will just be coming off of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which does tell me that there's going to be more focus with home, gathering, community, friends, family, and your private life. And so it can mean for some of you guys that are like, just getting a big promotion or a big job, that's a big change for you. There might be a celebration for that. It can also mean that your status changes. So it can mean that you went from, being single to, being married. And so then all of a sudden you're moving into a new home base and you're developing like a new family. So there's a million different ways that you can kind of interpret it. But I would say this is a little bit more challenging for you because it does represent you saying, I'm letting go of the control of life having to look this way, that it has to be this job, this status, this title. And I'm opening up and softening and not trying to control the outcome. And I'm trying to choose a life that's more about pleasure, that's slower, that's taking my time, that's less focused on the hustle and bustle and more focused on kind of getting grounded and like much more kind of connected to my home base. So it can feel uncomfortable for you basically. Now, the other thing to think about here is that Mars is the co-ruler, and Mars is in Pisces. So it's in your 2nd house, which is about money, resources, and self-esteem. So Mars has been meeting with Saturn. You and Capricorn and Pisces have all felt personally attacked. You were probably entitled to compensation with the Mars-Saturn conjunctions. And I think what this is kind of representing is that you're like, I am willing to actually either A, be more conservative with my spending and like my values are changing and where I'm putting my money or what I'm making money for, or B, there is this sense of feeling like I have more that I'm wanting to invest into like a home or a living situation. It could go one of the two ways, because this can ultimately be like controlled power. And maybe this is you saying, I'm trying to focus more on working from home or bringing resources in a way that's connected to home or property, or finding ways that, you can make money off of home, property, or real estate, or improving the value of that. So Mars being there is basically saying during the time of the full moon that, part of what you're looking at is like, if your job changes or if there's something that you're kind of scaling away from, what kind of an impact is that going to have on your resources? And where do you have to tighten your budget or kind of tweak things or make some changes to your spending in order to really fully, I think, embrace a lifestyle where you're having more freedom because you're not kind of tied to a traditional or typical kind of like 9-to-5 job, right? That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. But man, you and I feel like all of the fixed signs, there's not one that's getting it more than the other, but I feel like you and Scorpio are the ones who are really kind of getting raked over the coals here with this particular full moon. Positive cards though, let's keep the positivity going. So you get the Ace of Cups, and I love this because, the Ace of Cups doesn't really coordinate with the 10th house. The 10th house Scorpio is like power and control and work and status, And the Ace of Cups is like soft and like nurturing and opening up to something and something that's new. This is about love, relationships. This is about compassion, creativity, intimacy. So I do feel like for you, it's like your relationship to your job is changing or your status is changing. It may mean that it is a status or relationship change, that there is new relationships and partnerships coming into your life. It might mean that you have a new professional partnership, which feels good and comforting and like makes you kind of feel more so supported, and that it's going to be in alignment with a lot of the changes that you would like to see in your life. Good for love, good for money. This is also a card that I think is really kind of talking about Venus and the fact that pretty soon Venus is going to come into your 4th house and meet with all these placements. So it can be talking about that your relationship to your family and the partnerships that you have within the home front is really feeling super nurtured, and that there is a lot of like abundance and support that you're both giving and receiving to some of those people within your home. Okay. Great card for you, Aquarius. Glad to see it. And we've got Pisces and Pisces rising. You guys will be doing the full moon in Scorpio in your natal 9th house. This is a fellow sister water sign. So if you happen to have any placements in Pisces, that's like 3, 4, 5 degrees, you'll be experiencing a trine from what is the 4-degree Scorpio full moon. Okay, this is a little ahead, but you're gonna have the full moon in your 9th house. So for you Pisces, the 9th house is about travel, philosophy. It is about higher education. It is kind of like the bigger meaning of life. This is a positive house. It's a house that has connections traditionally with Jupiter. So it can be bringing you positive things that likely come from some kind of change, right, Scorpio? So when you have a full moon here, Scorpio's influence can bring about a desire for deeper understanding and exploration of life's mysteries. So a full moon in Scorpio may inspire you to travel or explore a new culture. It can mean that it's a time where you are booking a trip, completing a degree or a diploma program, getting a certification, completing something relating to publishing, or also something legal, okay? So if you're dealing with like a legal situation, or you're trying to make something legal, or you're serving something, or completing a lawsuit, or trying to publish something, these are generally the things that we see from the 9th house. Now, the challenge with this full moon is that we're gonna see the moon go from an opposition to the sun in your 3rd, where this is kind of bringing up, the 3rd and the 9th house, which is about communication and learning, or, what's going on in your neighborhood versus in the world. And this is, I think, a lot of like learning about finances and resources, budgeting things revolving around, travel, that can be coming up as well. And this full moon is going to square Pluto in your 12th house, which means that there could be some unexpected changes happening in the world, which could be impacting your ability to travel, to learn something. It could be changing something about your philosophy and how you see the world, or what you actually believe in. Pluto is the ruler of the 9th house. So as the full moon goes through the 9th house and it squares Pluto, I could see some of you guys are like, I really want to travel, but I'm afraid to get on an airplane or go somewhere right now. Or I really want to go back to school, but I'm afraid I'm going to fail. How do I do that? Especially because the 12th house can be about like completing higher levels of education. A lot of this is about shifts in what you believe in or what you know. It can bring for you some kind of like crisis of faith or belief system. And so there can be some things going on in the world where you're like, how could this be happening? Like, why is this happening in the world? And like, it can kind of rattle you in a spiritual sense, or if you're somebody who's like, religious, you could be like, I just don't understand, why are so many bad things happening in the world? And it can make you feel heavy, right? Especially being a Pisces, you guys are super empathic. But I would say don't let the harshness to some of the events impact the way that you see the world. Jupiter and Uranus have just recently, after this full moon, met in your 3rd house, which means you're supposed to be being optimistic and talking about it and writing about it and sharing positivity with the world and trying to offer new inventive solutions and being creative and funny and trying to keep that sense of humor while things feel very heavy. Equally, at the time of the full moon, we're going to see Mars, which is the co-ruler, very close to both Saturn and Neptune in your sign. So this can materialize as also that there is this sense of holding yourself back, doubting yourself, questioning whether or not you're capable, feeling kind of like your will is being thwarted a little bit, or that you're being delayed, or that you're hesitating when it comes to making moves within the 9th house. So are you hesitating when it comes to traveling? Are you afraid to book the trip? Are you hesitating when it comes to, going and teaching or writing or publishing something? Are you a little unsure as to, what your goals are? And are you feeling delayed when it comes to making, big decisions about the future? Don't doubt yourself. The energy is kind of wild for you, Pisces, because Mars, Saturn is like, no, now's not the right time. And then Mars going to hit Neptune. You're going to be like, it's still not the right time. So maybe you're waiting for some things to shake out before you decide that you want to book a big trip. Or maybe you're really wanting to do your due diligence and do some research before you decide, do I really want to go and actually launch this business or write this book? Or do I really want to, take this person to court? And you're like you're kind of hitting pause. That's kind of my interpretation of this. Don't let fear get in the way. Don't let the events of the world get in the way. When in doubt, take time to kind of reflect and meditate, because I think Pluto in the 12th house is saying that you need time alone to really ask yourself, like, how much am I going to let fear run the show, right? And influence and affect the way that I look at things, or influence and affect the way that I think or the way that I communicate with other people, and learning not to communicate in like a fear-based mindset. What may happen is that I think you're just going to be feeling more drawn to wanting to learn about other places and other cultures. And so this is a really good time if you're thinking about going to a foreign place or whatever, like, Mars and Saturn is like, go and, do your research, create a whole list of the places you want to go, go and get some photos and some other visualization to kind of see, is that a place that you would actually be interested in seeing? Are you drawn to that particular location for some reason? And if so, start creating a list of the places that you want to visit. The other thing that I would say is that this can be a lot about shifts and it's involving the way that you see yourself, because the 9th house is your philosophy, and Mars being in the 1st is like, do I really see myself as being a victim, right? Or do I see myself as being, like a hero? Do I see myself as being weak, or do I see myself as being strong? And so there's this back and forth about beliefs and what you believe about yourself, and you may feel like you're kind of wavering a little bit, but if that's how you're feeling, work with the sextile to both Jupiter and Uranus in your 3rd house. Speak your mantras out loud, write them down, pull tarot cards every morning, 1 card for yourself or 3 cards of the day to give you that confirmation that you're on the right path, or to make you more aware of some of the subtle messages that are going on around you that you can be kind of picking up on. I would also say something to take into consideration is that, because this is so strongly connected to either education or traveling, I would wait until Mercury turns retrograde, because Mars is the dispositor of Mercury, later in the month. And then you can kind of pull the trigger and say, okay, now I'm going to apply to that program, or now I'm going to actually book the tickets. If that's something that's, hindering you from going somewhere, I would say wait until that happens. But don't let fear run the show, basically. The card that I get for you is the Page of Wands. Okay, so this is about being fearless. This is about being courageous, being optimistic, adventurous, excited, fresh new ideas, cheerfulness, energy, and limitless potential. Okay, so this can also be about fire signs, Aries, Leos, and Sagittarians that can kind of pop in, or people who are, kind of trying to convince you to kind of get out and do things. I wonder if this is a friend, because Mars has been conjunct Saturn. If there's a friend that's like, come on, let's go to this place together. And you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And you're kind of like going back and forth, and somebody's trying to kind of push you to like get out and go and do something that's getting out of your comfort zone. I could see that. But for you, I think it's just about, being more fearless and optimistic about the future and being like, you know what, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There's always going to be something going on. I can't really limit me from doing the things that I want to do, right? Great card for you guys. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Pisces. And that's it, guys. That is everything I have for this particular full moon. I mean, I'm excited to see what happens. I know that it's going to be pretty damn action-packed as we're getting closer to this now that we're kind of working our way out of eclipse season. But let me know, how are you feeling with this full moon in Scorpio? How is it aspecting your chart? And what do you anticipate is going to happen? I always love hearing your guys' comments. Thank you so much for your support, for your thumbs up, and for your words of encouragement. It really helps the channel grow. You're helping me reach my goal of hitting 50,000 subscribers this year. So we are getting closer and closer to 35K. So make sure you're subscribed and share this with other astrology enthusiasts. You guys can catch me back here on Thursday. We're going to be talking all about some of the other transits that are taking place. And we're going to be actually doing horoscopes. I think horoscopes are going to be coming out for May. So all the more reason to be subscribed. If you guys would like to book a personal reading with me or check out my tarot or astrology courses or my personal calendars, head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. If you guys go there, you can sign up for my newsletter, see my availability for my one-on-one scheduling. I take clients live on Zoom. You guys can see my availability starting in July of this year. So if you know that you have a birthday coming up, make sure you get on my list. And I will leave it at that. So happy full mooning, even though this is going to be quite a Plutonian moon. And I will see all of you guys back here on Thursday. Until next time, take care.